All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into the world of airline transport pilots.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, it's not as simple as it looks.
No, not at
We're
all.
talking about the best of the best,
Yeah.
the pilots who are trusted with those massive aircraft.
Right, those big ones over 5,700 kilograms, as I recall.
Yeah, RoleCatcher mentioned that weight limit. It's not just about looking cool in the uniform, right?
No, it's a huge responsibility. You're responsible for the safe operation of the aircraft, for the crew, for the passengers. It's a high-stakes environment, for sure.
Definitely high stakes, but I imagine that's part of what makes it so rewarding, too.
Absolutely. Knowing that you've safely transported hundreds of people, thousands of miles, that's a feeling like no other.
And speaking of rewards, RoleCatcher mentioned something really interesting about how sustainable aviation fuels are changing the game for the industry.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's not just about mastering the old skills anymore. Pilots need to stay updated on these new technologies and alternative fuels.
Right, because it impacts everything from the aircraft itself to potentially even flight paths for optimal fuel efficiency.
Exactly. It adds a whole new layer of complexity to the job.
So it's not just about being a great pilot, it's about being adaptable and knowledgeable about a constantly changing field.
That's the aviation industry in a nutshell. Always evolving.
So with all that in mind, what's the job outlook like for aspiring airline transport pilots?
Well, based on what I've seen, the demand is definitely there. RoleCatcher mentioned a projected growth of around 5% between 2019 and 2029.
That's good news, though I'm guessing it's not exactly a walk in the park to become one.
You're telling me. It's a pretty rigorous process.
RoleCatcher breaks down some of the requirements, starting with the licenses, the CPL and ATPL.
Right, the commercial pilot license and airline transport pilot license, those are essential.
Essential and probably not easy to get. What does it actually take to earn those licenses?
Well, you're looking at a significant amount of flight hours, for one, plus rigorous training, both in the air and on the ground.
So we're talking years of dedicated work, not just a quick weekend course.
Definitely not. And then there are the exams. Those are nothing to scoff at.
Intense written exams, I imagine.
Exactly. They cover everything from aviation regulations and meteorology to navigation and aircraft systems. It's a comprehensive deep dive into all aspects of aviation.
Wow. So it's clear that becoming an airline transport pilot requires a serious commitment. But let's say you've put in the hours, aced the exams, and earned those coveted licenses. What's next? How do you actually land a job with an airline?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The interview process is notoriously tough.
I bet. I can only imagine the competition is fierce for these roles.
You're not wrong. Airlines are incredibly selective when it comes to their pilots. They're not just looking for someone who can fly a plane. They want individuals who can handle pressure, make critical decisions, and command a cockpit.
It makes sense. When you're responsible for hundreds of lives, your technical skills are only part of the equation. You need the right temperament, the leadership qualities, and the ability to stay calm under pressure.
Exactly. And that's something airlines are very keen on uncovering during the interview process.
So how do they go about assessing that? What kind of questions can aspiring pilots expect in these interviews? I'm curious to hear what RoleCatcher had to say about this. So RoleCatcher gives us a few examples of these interview questions, and yeah, they're pretty intense.
Oh, yeah, they don't hold back.
Like one that stood out to me was, describe a time you had to deviate from a flight plan because of unexpected weather. What did you have to consider and what actions did you take?
That's a really good one because it forces you to think on your feet. You have to lay out your thought process, how you prioritize safety, and how you communicate effectively under pressure.
Yeah, it's not just about knowing how to fly the plane. It's about being able to make critical decisions in a split second.
Exactly, and those decisions have huge implications.
Speaking of which, before you even get to those high-pressure scenarios, what does the training actually involve? We touched on the licenses, but what does the path to becoming an airline transport pilot look like?
Well, there are a couple of different routes you can take. RoleCatcher talks about the traditional flight school route, which is pretty common. But then there's also the military route.
So some aspiring pilots come from a military background.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And they often have a lot of flying experience already, even before they apply to commercial airlines.
That makes sense. But I imagine both paths require a ton of dedication and hard work.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about learning to fly. It's about mastering these complex aircraft systems, understanding all the regulations, and really developing that critical sense of airmanship.
Right, like knowing how to anticipate problems and make the right call even when things get tricky.
Exactly. You need to be able to think ahead and stay calm under pressure, and that takes a lot of practice and training. Not to mention the physical and mental demands of the job. They don't just hand you the keys to a jumbo jet, you know.
I can imagine. So you've gone through years of rigorous training,
Hmm.
aced all your exams, logged countless hours in the air, and finally landed an interview. Then they hit you with these crazy, intense questions designed to see how you handle pressure.
And just when you think you've got it all figured out, you find out that they're increasingly using AI-powered tools to evaluate candidates.
AI in the interview room. You're kidding.
Nope. RoleCatcher says it's becoming more and more common. They're using these AI platforms that analyze everything from your facial expressions and tone of voice to your micro expressions and word choices.
It's like a high-tech lie detector test.
Sort of. But instead of detecting lies, it's more about assessing how well you handle pressure, your stress levels, your confidence, your honesty, all these factors that might predict job performance.
It's kind of unnerving when you think about it, all this technology analyzing your every move.
It can feel a bit intrusive, I'll give you that. But it's all in the name of creating a more objective and data-driven hiring process.
I guess that makes sense. They want to be absolutely certain they're picking the right people for the job.
Right. It's a high-stakes profession, so they're not taking any chances.
Okay, so let's say you pass all those hurdles, the training, the exams, the interviews, even the AI assessment. You've finally landed your dream job as an airline transport pilot.
Yeah.
What's next? What's the day-to-day reality of the job actually like?
Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's not all glamorous international flights and smooth sailing.
I was just about to ask about that. I mean, we've all experienced those bumpy flights where you feel like you're on a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah, those are fun. But seriously speaking, dealing with turbulence and unexpected weather conditions is a regular part of the job.
I can only imagine what it's like from the pilot's perspective.
It definitely keeps you on your toes. You have to stay calm, make quick decisions, and keep the passengers informed, all while navigating some pretty intense situations.
I'm starting to realize that being an airline transport pilot requires nerves of steel.
You could say that. It takes a special kind of person to stay level-headed under that kind of pressure.
And it's not just the pressure of dealing with unexpected situations. It's also the long hours, the time zone changes, the constant travel.
Exactly. It's a demanding lifestyle that requires a lot of sacrifice and flexibility.
It sounds like it takes a certain personality type to thrive in that kind of environment.
You got it. It's not for everyone, that's for sure. But for those who are cut out for it, it can be an incredibly rewarding career.
So we've talked about the training, the interviews, the pressure, the lifestyle. But there's another aspect we haven't touched on yet, technology in the cockpit.
Ah, yes, the elephant in the room, or should I say the autopilot?
Exactly. With all the advancements in automation and AI, it's got to be changing the game for pilots.
Oh, absolutely. It's a hot topic right now, and for good reason.
So how is technology shaping the role of the pilot? I mean, are we headed towards a future where pilots are obsolete? So are we headed towards a future where pilots are obsolete?
Well, RoleCatcher seems to think that's not quite the case. They argue that while automation is definitely changing things, the role of the pilot is evolving, not disappearing.
So it's less about being replaced by robots and more about adapting to these new technologies.
Right, it's more of a partnership. You've got autopilot systems that can handle a lot of the routine tasks.
Which frees up the pilots to focus on the more critical stuff.
Exactly. Things like decision-making, strategic planning, and managing any unexpected situations that might arise.
So it's like having a really advanced co-pilot that never needs a coffee break.
Exactly. And don't forget about the importance of human judgment and intuition. Those are crucial in those critical moments when things don't go as planned. No matter how sophisticated AI gets, it can't fully replicate those nuanced decisions that a seasoned pilot makes.
Right, like when you need to think outside the box or react to something completely unpredictable.
That's where human experience and instinct really come into play. So, yeah, instead of fearing AI, aspiring pilots should see it as a tool that can actually enhance their capabilities and change the nature of their work for the better.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change. And it seems like aviation is a perfect example of that.
Always evolving, always pushing the boundary.
But even with all that change, one thing remains constant, that allure of flight.
Absolutely. That feeling of being in control of a massive aircraft soaring above the clouds. It's pretty special.
It's the perfect note to end on, I think. The allure of flight, the evolution of technology, and the enduring importance of human skill in a world increasingly driven by AI. For anyone listening who's ever dreamt of becoming an airline transport pilot, I hope this deep dive has given you a glimpse into what it takes to reach those heights.
It's a challenging path, no doubt. But if you're passionate about it and willing to put in the work, the sky's the limit.
Well said. And that wraps up our deep dive into the world of airline transport pilots. We've covered a lot of ground, from rigorous training regimes and those nerve-wracking interviews to the evolving role of technology and the importance of human skills in the age of AI. Till next time, keep your eyes on the skies.